Q and Review, celebrating 40 years of audio production, welcomes you to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports Podcast, recorded from our studio in the Bishopbriggs Media Centre and by our volunteers working from home. Keep up to date with Q and Review news via our Facebook, Twitter or Instagram at Q and Review, that's @CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch with us directly by emailing information@qandreview.com, that's INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. Please like and share our podcast and give us constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, June 6. Ultra running legend, happy to take the long way round. Report by Susan Egglestaff. All elite athletes have something extraordinary about them. When it comes to Jasmine Paris, however, everything is extraordinary. The 39-year-old Scot is widely acknowledged as one of the greatest ultra runners of her generation, and perhaps ever. She has countless records to her name, has been lauded by the likes of Chelsea Clinton and Barbara Streisand, and has done more than most to shine a spotlight on the somewhat niche world of ultra running. Such is Paris's prowess over unthinkably long distances. She's had some of her best results in races lasting over 24 hours and stretching hundreds of miles. This week's World Mountain and Trail Championships, which begin today in Austria, will feel like something of a sprint to her. Paris is one of 8 Scots selected in the 33-strong Great Britain team and will race the long trail race, which is, by her standards, a modest 85 kilometres. Paris's lead up to these World Championships says everything about the size of the challenge she likes to embrace. Earlier this year, Paris raced the Barkley Marathon, a trail ultra race in rural Tennessee in America that is widely regarded as the toughest race on the planet, which is backed up by the incredible statistic that in the event's 37-year history, it's been completed by only 18 people in total. While a race with such a reputation would make most people balk, it's exactly the kind of challenge Paris embraces, and while she ended up withdrawing after 4 laps, which took 2 whole days, she relished the experience. She says, "Barkley is a unique challenge. It's difficult to describe it. I feel very fortunate to have been able to race it, because not many people get the chance each year. But it is incredibly hard, because you need to concentrate fully the entire time. There's lots of things about it that makes it tough. If you win it, you're running for about 60 hours with no sleep. 3 people finished it this year, and only one slept for about 20 minutes. You have to really want it to do well." It's not only Paris's Barkley attempts. This year's race was her second time entering the event that make her stand out. She has a raft of further records and accolades under her belt. During the course of her career, she has set women's records for the UK's 3 premier 24-hour mountain running challenges: the Bob Graham Round in England's Lake District, Scotland's Ramsay Round, and the Paddy Buckley Round in Wales. In 2016, she won the Extreme Skyrunning World Series, and is a former British fell running champion. Perhaps her most eye-catching achievement, however, was her victory in the Spine race in 2019. Not only did Paris become the first woman to win the 268-mile race, she smashed the course record by 12 hours in the process, and did so while pausing to express breast milk at aid stations for her young daughter, who was still breastfeeding. They are remarkable achievements for someone who had few intentions of becoming an elite athlete when she began running. In fact, her motivation remains little to do with winning, and much more to do with the enjoyment she garners from being in the mountains. However, she also possesses a few personality traits that have helped her become one of the very best in the world. She says, "I did a lot of hiking when I was a kid, and I love being out in nature. The mountains make me really happy, so starting running was quite a natural progression. There's a real buzz when you're fit and can move fast through the mountains. Why I've ended up doing well at racing is that when I do something, I really throw myself into it. I'm a perfectionist, and I work pretty hard at what I want to do. I'm prepared to suffer, and I'm stubborn and single-minded, so all of those things help." It's not only Paris's racing achievements that are notable. Having spent so much of her life out in the wild, it is perhaps unsurprising that she's acutely aware of the effects of climate change and the impact of each individual's carbon footprint has on the environment, which is why she decided that rather than travel to these World Championships with her Great Britain compatriots by aeroplane, she wanted to limit her environmental impact by going by train. So a relatively short journey turned into an all-day journey, but it's a sacrifice she was more than willing to make for the sake of the planet. She says, "Going to Innsbruck by train is a longer journey, but I don't think it'll impact how I'll perform in the race. I promised myself if I could get somewhere by land and sea rather than flying, I'd do that. And hopefully, by me talking about it, it can raise the profile of the cause a little bit more." When Paris stands on the start line on Friday, she will be consumed not by thoughts of gold, but instead by thoughts of getting everything out of herself. With the exertions of the Barkley Marathon still in her legs, there's the possibility that the pace will be just too fast for her to keep in touch with the leaders. But as always with Paris, there's always the possibility that she does something extraordinary. And she says, "I don't know if I'll be running at my very best after Barkley, but I'll give it my very best shot. I want to feel like I've been competitive and run a good race. It'd be really nice for the team to be on the podium, so it'd be great to help towards that, but I don't really know. I'll just give it everything and see what happens." Report by Susan Egglestaff. Evening Times Sport, June 6. The fixture. There can be few surprises in Postecoglou's decision to join Tottenham, says James Morgan. As the television cameras honed in on their target at the final whistle of Saturday's Scottish Cup final, it did not take an expert in body language to know that Ange Postecoglou was leaving Celtic for Tottenham Hotspur. Anyone watching for signs of what was going on inside Big Ange's head would have arrived at that conclusion fairly quickly. He looked as if he didn't quite know what to do with himself as he made his way around Hampden applauding fans, gently tapping a clenched fist to his heart every few seconds. There was a moistening around the eyes when the strains of "You'll Never Walk Alone" and a look away from the camera. If it wasn't already clear that the 57-year-old had a couple of suitcases packed back at home, then virtual confirmation came in his press conferences afterwards. The direct refusal to answer a question about whether he would be Celtic manager only confirmed to the realists that this was, indeed, to be his last act in the Parkhead hot seat. Looking down from the posh seats, the expressions on the faces of Peter Lowell and Dermot Desmond only franked that belief. Yet, in the aftermath, there were still those Celtic fans who clung to any little morsel, suggesting that he would be mad to leave for Tottenham, a basket case of a club, conveniently forgetting that their own club had been similarly dysfunctional upon Postecoglou's appointment in 2021. The 6 stages of grief are well known to Tottenham fans. They have experienced them enough times to know when they are staring them in the face, having suffered them when some of their favourite sons, Dimitar Berbatov, Luka Modric and Gareth Bale to name but 3, have departed for bigger and better things. There were similar reactions to the final throes of Mauricio Pochettino's tenure. The direct lineage to Tottenham's woes of recent seasons can be traced to the Argentine's departure. Now they have maybe the closest thing to Pochettino arriving, with a view to recapturing that vibe. The genius of Postecoglou, aside from his obvious coaching ability, is his ability to make people love him. There is the element of the sports psychologist about him, but also, to borrow from the Australian vernacular, the good bloke. His words in the aftermath of Saturday's final, inside the media suite at Hampden, sounded very much like a message not just for Celtic supporters, but also a plaintive appeal to those at Tottenham. "Let's not beat about the bush. I was a joke when I was appointed," he said. "A lot of people made fun of my appointment, but the supporters, for their own reasons, just put their collective arms around me and said, 'No, he's one of ours,' and it was up to me to repay that faith and trust. If he does that quickly, he will soon have Spurs fans eating out of the palm of his hands." Meanwhile, there has been a tendency to paint Spurs as some minnow of English football, rather than a team that has finished in the top 4 more often than Manchester United and Arsenal over the past decade. If Brendan Rodgers left for an English club with far less history and financial heft than Tottenham, then why would one of his successors at Celtic be any different when a more prestigious and lucrative offer came along? They are the 9th richest club in world football. It is a testament to Daniel Levy's prowess as a pure businessman, even if plenty of his decisions affecting on-pitch matters have been poor. This time, he has turned to those who know football, a rarity for him in recent years, and alighted on Postecoglou. He may be the second choice behind Feyenoord's Arne Slot, but then so was Pochettino in 2014, when Louis van Gaal had been teed up for the role. Further proof of Levy's financial genius came last week, when Forbes published a list of the sports clubs who have generated the most pure profit in the past 3 years. Tottenham sat third on it, behind the Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. One wag on social media posted it in response to another, who asked why Postecoglou would not wait for a better job to come along. "Who on this list is bigger?" joked the Spurs fan. "Who knows? If Postecoglou can win a trophy at Spurs, then maybe the Dallas Cowboys might just give him a call in an attempt to end their long drought without a Super Bowl, says J. Morgan. Evening Times Sport, June 7. Jack Butland makes Manchester United comparison. Report by Chris Jack. Jack Butland reckons his stint at Manchester United has prepared him perfectly for life at Rangers under Michael Beale. The former England keeper has put pen to paper on a 4-year deal at Ibrox to become the third signing of the summer as Beale builds his squad for a shot at the Premiership title. Butland spent last term on loan with United as he provided backup for David De Gea and has moved north of the border following the expiry of his deal with Crystal Palace. Boss Beale has landed one of his key transfer targets ahead of the new campaign, and the decision was an easy one to make for Butland as he committed his future to Rangers. It is one of those, like this opportunity, that you don't turn down, Butland told Rangers TV when asked about his time at Old Trafford. You don't turn down the opportunity to join clubs like that with the history that they have, with the players that they have got. Me going there, it was only an opportunity to better myself and to learn. Again, another style of play. The European nights we had, the Carabao Cup final, obviously a disappointing result in the FA Cup final. I think it has prepared me well for what is to come here. I have been lucky enough throughout my career to be involved with England and been at major tournaments and things like that. So United was another taste of success, a taste of getting to those major knockout games. That is what being here is all about. Hopefully I can take some of that into pre-season, and we have many nights like that ourselves. The capture of Butland continues an encouraging summer of transfer dealings for Rangers following the arrivals of former Norwich City midfielder Kieran Dowell and Chelsea fullback Dujon Sterling in recent weeks. Beale has been putting in the hours and the miles to ensure players sign on the dotted line, and Butland was impressed with the personal touch from his new manager and said, "He played a massive part. No matter the size of the club, you still want to hear good things from the manager. You want to hear that desire, a plan, and a direction. What this club expects is a given, regardless of the manager. But when you hear a manager speak about how quickly he wants us to get back to winning ways and how he wants to do that, as a player, that's music to your ears. It plays a huge part. I wouldn't say it was the final nail in the coffin to come. I was already on my way. But when you hear that it's really important that you have a manager that is going to drive us forward, without a doubt, I am looking forward to working with him on the training pitch. That's where games are won. You've got to put the groundwork in. I'm looking forward to seeing how the manager works and working with Colin Stewart and the other keepers. Hopefully, I can have a positive impact on the younger boys, and as a goalie department we push each other and keep standards high, putting in top performances for this club. I am excited to get to work. Butland will claim the number 1 jersey at Ibrox next term as he replaces Light Blues legend Alan McGregor between the sticks and looks to lead by example at home and abroad. The task of following in McGregor's footsteps is no easy one, but the 30-year-old is proud to have the chance to leave his own mark in Rangers folklore. Said Butland, "Just walking around the stadium, you see his pictures everywhere, So that tells you all you need to know about him. Arguably, from my point of view, he's one of the most recognisable players in recent years at Rangers Football Club. From what I hear, he's a top guy, but what he's done for the club and the longevity he's shown in his spells at the club has been immense. You see his face everywhere, with medals round his neck, holding trophies in the air, so it's an honour to follow on from what he's done. Report by Chris Jack. Evening Times Sport, June 7. Nick Roger points towards PGA Tour, DP World Tour and LIV Forge merger that nobody saw coming. In the middle of the afternoon yesterday, you may have heard a loud thud. Presumably, it was the sound of jaws hitting the floor around the golfing world, as all and sundry were rendered utterly flabbergasted by the news that the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and Saudi-backed LIV Golf will merge together in the most unlikely alliance since Beauty took up with the Beast. Donald Trump, who staged a LIV event at his Doral resort recently, wrote that it was a big, beautiful and glamorous deal for the wonderful world of golf. He would though, wouldn't he? Others will take some convincing. Almost a year to the day since the Rebel LIV series staged its first event at the Centurion Club near St Albans, the bitter civil war that has consumed the men's professional game at the highest level is over. LIV golf defectors will now have a route back to the traditional tours they were ostracised from, as well as the Ryder Cup. Division, defections, disruption, distractions, rancour, moralising, legal processes, fines, suspensions, petty squabbling. You name it. The game has been mired in it over the past few months. Now we have a quite staggering truth that was laid out in a press relief that was so out of the blue, even the blue itself was caught on the hop. The PGA Tour, DP World Tour, and the Public Investment Fund, PIF, today announced a landmark agreement to unify the game of golf on a global basis, said the statement, which also declared an end to all pending litigation between the warring factions. The parties have signed an agreement that combines PIF's golf-related commercial businesses and rights, including LIV Golf, with the commercial businesses and rights of the PGA Tour and DP World Tour into a new collectively owned for-profit entity to ensure that all stakeholders benefit from a model that delivers maximum excitement and competition among the game's best players, it read. The unveiling of this tripartite coalition took everybody by surprise. Even high-profile players were rushing to social media to say that they had just found out about the seismic activity on the fevered jungle drum that is Twitter. Maintaining such a tight shroud of secrecy is no mean feat in an age when it is nigh on impossible to keep anything under wraps. The DP World Tour Chief Executive Keith Pelley said last night, "I got a text saying we should write a book on the art of confidentiality." It all seemed very clandestine, yet, by various accounts, the peace-broking was all very civilized. According to the Financial Times, the deal was done over meals in Venice and rounds of golf in London. Jay Monahan, the PGA Tour Commissioner, said that he began to trust Yasser Al Rumayyan, the head of Saudi's Sovereign Wealth Fund, 10 minutes after sitting down with him in Venice. The starter must have been nice. Said Monaghan, I applaud Yasser al-Rumayyan for his vision and collaborative and forward-thinking approach that is not just a solution to the rift in our game, but also a commitment to taking it to new heights. This will engender a new era in global golf for the better. Monaghan's volte-face was quite something, as he backed out of his anti-LIV stance with about as much elegance as a man reversing his car into the entire peloton of the Tour de France. Monaghan had once used the victims of the 9/11 outrage to effectively shame those American players who had jumped on board the Saudi-bankrolled gravy train. Now he is hailing a union with the Saudis as a momentous day. The moral high ground can be a slippery old perch. For the staunch Tour loyalists such as Rory McIlroy, who became the public face of the establishment as he opposed LIV with robust, yet ultimately draining vehemence, the feeling is that he and others have been flung under the bus by Monaghan. From splintering golf's traditional ecosystem, the Saudis, who backed an event on the DP World Tour as recently as 2021, have effectively bought their way back into it, and LIV gets the access and legitimacy it has craved. For all the cries about a brutal regime sports washing their atrocities, this latest development is another milestone in Saudi's unrelenting advance on sport. From football to Formula One and boxing, money, regardless of where it comes from, talks. Interestingly, the details of this golfing merger, which is still a framework agreement and will require a heck of a lot of ironing out over the weeks and months ahead, made no mention of Greg Norman, the combative CEO of LIV. McIlroy once witheringly suggested that Norman would have to step down to allow the adults to work on a peace settlement. Apparently Norman was taken by surprise, just like everybody else. Golf's war is over, but the questions and the controversy will continue to rage, says Nick Roger. Evening Times Sport, June 7. Postecoglou to trigger £20 million transfer race for Kyogo. Report by Ewan Payton. Ange Postecoglou is set to ignite a £20 million transfer scramble for Celtic star Kyogo this summer, according to a report. The new Tottenham boss is said to be keen to take the Japanese star to North London with him. The Australian was officially announced as the new Spurs manager yesterday and will start the job on July 1. He left Glasgow after just 2 years, where he enjoyed immense success with Celtic, winning 5 trophies out of 6. It remains to be seen whether John Kennedy, Gavin Strachan and Greg Wallace will join him on his new venture. But according to the Scottish Sun, Kyogo is a prime target for the Aussie. They say it is widely expected that Postecoglou will launch a huge bid for the Hoops talisman in the coming weeks, and in turn this could spark a transfer tussle across the continent with several European clubs all tracking him. It is reported that Lazio have scouted him, while French and Spanish sides have also joined a host of English top-flight clubs in casting their eye over Scotland's top goalscorer. Kyogo joined Celtic from Vissel Kobe for £4.6 million in July 2021. It is claimed he would now be worth 5 times as much after 54 goals in 83 appearances. He has 2 years left on his current deal, and Parkhead Chiefs are under no pressure to sell. The player himself recently insisted he's happy in Glasgow. However, aged 29, he will know his time frame to make the jump into the top 5 leagues in Europe is only a short window. The report claims, with mentor Postecoglou quitting for Spurs, the chances of Kyogo signing an extension at the Hoops have decreased. It's said that with Spurs' huge budget, they could land Kyogo for £20 million and it would be regarded as a bargain. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 7. SFA Chief on Scotland manager Steve Clarke's future. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Ian Maxwell, the Scottish FA Chief Executive, has expressed confidence that Steve Clarke, who has been linked with the managerial vacancy at Celtic, will remain in charge of Scotland. Clarke has been installed as one of the favourites to take over at Parkhead, following the departure of Ange Postecoglou for Tottenham Hotspur. The former Chelsea, Newcastle United and Liverpool assistant has transformed the national team's fortunes since being appointed 4 years ago. He led Scotland through to the Euro 2020 finals, and his men are currently sitting on top of their Euro 2024 qualifying section, following opening Group A wins over Cyprus and Spain. But Maxwell, speaking after the SFA AGM at Hampden yesterday, has no fears about the former Kilmarnock manager being lured away by either the Scottish champions or a club down in England. The 59-year-old, whose team take on Norway away on Saturday week and then Georgia at home 3 days later, signed a 3-year contract extension back in March that ties him to the national team until 2026. The SFA Chief Executive believes the Ayrshireman is fully focused on reaching the Euro 2024 finals next summer, and then the World Cup in Canada, Mexico and the United States in 2026. He said, "He's desperate to get us to the Euros and a World Cup. They had the success of 2020 at the Euros, which was played in 2021. And to do that under more normal circumstances would be fantastic. We extended him just before the March games, so I think it was a bit of a masterstroke by the board. We are absolutely delighted. He's done great. They're over in Spain just now preparing for the June games. We're giving them as much support as we can to make sure they're ready. We have got a tough game over in Norway, which is a sellout, and we've got a sellout against Georgia back at Hampden. We have got 5 games over the course of the campaign that are sold out. We've given ourselves a great chance. We've got a good platform off the back of the last 2 results. Having a result like we had against Spain at the start of the campaign is something we haven't done for a while. We had a great result against Denmark in Qatar 2022 qualifying, but they had already qualified, and it was later on in the campaign. Doing it at the front end of the campaign gives you a great chance, and I get the sense from the manager that the players are aware of the opportunity they've got, particularly with 2 qualifying. But Norway have announced their squad, and they've got good players in that squad. Georgia won't be easy either. They're a good side with top players in their midst. But so have we, and I think in Norway and Georgia they'll be having the same conversation and saying, we're playing Scotland, and they had a great result against Spain, so we know how difficult that will be. I am delighted with the way things are going. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Evening Times Sport, June 8. The Moravcik factor that makes Knutsen the right coach for Celtic. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Former Celtic and Norway defender cum midfielder Vidar Riseth believes that Bodo Glimt manager Kjetil Knutsen is the right coach to replace Ange Postecoglou because of his proven track record of landing exceptional players in the international transfer market for affordable fees. Knutsen, who led Bodo to back-to-back titles in 20 and 21, and then through to the quarter-finals of the UEFA Conference League, has emerged as one of the favourites to take over from Postecoglou at Parkhead. Riseth feels the three-time Coach of the Year, who masterminded an astonishing 6-1 win over the Roma team managed by Jose Mourinho in the Conference League group stages in 2021, would be the perfect man for the job. The 52 times capped 51-year-old, who has worked as a television pundit in his homeland since retiring from playing, has marvelled at how his countryman has repeatedly assembled successful sides on a limited budget. The utility man saw how his then manager, Dr. Joe Venglos, was widely ridiculed by opposition fans and media pundits when he signed his Slovakian compatriot Lubomir Moravcik from Duisburg for £200,000 the month after he arrived in Glasgow in 1998. However, he watched the midfield magician take Scottish football by storm during the next 2 seasons, make his detractors eat their words with his inspired attacking display, and firmly establish himself as an all-time Celtic great. Riseth is confident that Knutsen, who has also been linked with a move to Ajax following the sacking of John Heitinga last week, would be able to unearth a similar standard of player and help the Scottish champions to compete with owners from larger and richer leagues at the highest level in Europe. However, he has seen how the 54-year-old, whose team recorded an emphatic 5-1 aggregate victory over Postecoglou's side in the Conference League knockout round play-off last season, has turned down the chance to move abroad in the past and thinks the treble winners will do well to land him. Asked if he thought that Knutsen would be a good appointment by Celtic, he said, 100%. I know that before he signed his current contract with Bodo, that he had the chance to go to the Bundesliga clubs in Germany and Premier League clubs in England, but he felt that he could not walk away because he had a really good team. If Celtic have a chance to sign him up, they have to, because he is a really good coach. He is definitely the right coach for Celtic, but I think it is going to be really difficult for them because he is really happy at Bodo. The system that he uses at Bodo has been a big part of their success, but he also has to pick the right players. He is a manager who can see the good side of every player and put all the players he has together in a system that works good. That is very important for a team to get success. One of his great strengths is being able to find the right players. Sometimes he doesn't go for the big names. Knutsen is this type of coach. He finds players who are good in the system he uses and makes it work. Everyone in Scotland will remember Lubomir Moravcik. When he came to Celtic, nobody had heard about him, but he played brilliant football, scored a lot of good goals and enjoyed great success. He is a legend at Parkhead now. Celtic are not able to spend the sort of money on players that the teams they play in Europe can. That is why I think Knutsen is the right coach for Celtic. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Evening Times Sport, June 8. Chris Sutton rates Maresca as Celtic manager. Report by Ewan Payton. Chris Sutton understands the Celtic appeal towards highly rated coach Enzo Maresca. The Hoops hero has addressed his old club's search for a new gaffer following the departure of Ange Postecoglou on Tuesday. The 57-year-old left Glasgow after only 2 years to join Tottenham Hotspur on a 4-year deal. Even before the deal was concluded, attention swiftly turned to who will be coming in as the Australian's replacement. Maresca has been heavily touted for the job, alongside Kajeto Knutsen. Brendan Rodgers is the favourite, with betting suspended on the Irishman yesterday. But it's Maresca of Manchester City who has caught the eye of Sutton, who insists Guardiola's trust in the Italian could be a huge indicator. He wrote in the Daily Record, "I read that Guardiola said he is going to make an extraordinary manager like Arteta. With that in mind, I can see a lot of reasons why Maresca would appeal. I have no idea whether he could handle the environment in Glasgow, or whether he's cut out to be a manager in his own right. But the fact Guardiola got him back to be his assistant after the job at Parma did not work out for him suggests he rates him. And let's face it, if Pep phones you up and says he's got a guy who's pretty damn good at coaching players, you are going to listen." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 8. Rangers' pursuit of Serie A striker Dessers. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Cyril Dessers, the Nigerian striker who Rangers are interested in signing, will have no difficulty adapting to Scottish football if he joins the Ibrox club this summer because of his physical playing style. Dessers, who has previously played for Lochern and Genk in Belgium, and Utrecht, Heracles and Feyenoord in the Netherlands, was unable to prevent Cremonese from finishing second bottom of Serie A in Italy and being relegated this season. However, Marco Negri, the former Rangers striker, who has worked as a specialist forwards coach since retiring from playing, has been impressed by the 6'1" 28-year-old's performances up front for the Lombardy outfit in the past 10 months. He can understand why his former club, whose manager Michael Beale is looking to increase his options in attack following the departure of record European goalscorer Alfredo Morelos, are keen to sign him. Former Udinese, Bologna and Perugia player Negri, who netted 36 goals for Walter Smith's side in the 97-98 season and finished his debut campaign as Scotland's leading goalscorer, stressed that Dessers is not a prolific marksman. However, he feels the 3 times capped international has many attributes as a footballer and could be deployed in a number of different formations by Beale, both at home and abroad, if Rangers and Cremonese can agree a fee in the coming days. He said, "Dessers is a strong guy. He is really physical. Cremonese were relegated to Serie B at the end of the season, but I thought he had a very good season for them. It was his first season in Serie A, but he certainly showed he can fight against a big defender. He always worked very hard for the team, on both sides of the game, on the offensive side and the defensive side as well. He has areas of his game that he could improve. He is not a natural goal scorer, and he did not score a lot of goals. He was on target 7 times in all competitions. For me, he has to try and increase the number of goals that he scores in a season. He is not an Ali McCoy type player who can score 30 goals a season. But he is certainly a fighter, a guy who can bring some energy to a team. He is physical. He can battle in 1v1 situations. He can hold the ball up. He can make clever runs for his teammates. He can definitely do a job up front. He can play in a 2-man front line, or he can play as a lone striker with 2 players supporting him. You can play high balls up to him because he is strong with his head. You can play it to his feet because he can hold the ball. I think he would be a good signing for Rangers. Cremonese paid Genk £5.5 million for the striker back in August, and are looking to receive £6 million for him this summer. They knocked back the initial 7-figure bid that Rangers made earlier this week. However, Negri reckons Dessers will be keen to move to a club where he will be guaranteed European football next season, possibly in the Champions League group stages, and is confident the transfer will go through in the coming days. And he said, "I think they can do the deal because at the end of the day, Cremonese are now in Serie B. The guy will want to sign for a club like Rangers. It will be a dream come true for him. He can always give me a phone call if he isn't sure what to do, and I will advise him to sign." Report by Matthew Lindsay. Evening Times Sport, June 9. Celtic set for coaching shake-up as Steve Hamill appointed. Report by Aidan Smith. Celtic are set to appoint Stephen Hamill as head of coaching in a shake-up to the club's current setup, according to reports. The former Motherwell manager has been out of work since he was sacked back in February. Now, according to the Daily Record, Hamill will be appointed on the recommendation of Ange Postecoglou in a newly created role. Clubs have been instructed to introduce a head of coaching position by the Scottish Football Association. Meanwhile, Craig Beattie feels his former Celtic teammate John Kennedy is destined to be a great manager, but could decide continuing to work under Ange Postecoglou will help in his ambitions. The new Tottenham manager reportedly wants to take assistant boss Kennedy to North London, along with Gavin Strachan, when he officially takes over on July 1. Kennedy had a spell as interim manager in 2021 before the Australian took over, having previously worked under Ronnie Delia, Brendan Rodgers and Neil Lennon. The 39-year-old could be a contender for the Celtic job and was linked with the Hearts vacancy before Stephen Naismith was handed an extended deal. Beattie speculated that Kennedy will have a difficult decision to make if Postecoglou is continue their working relationship. The PFA Scotland Player Relations Officer told Sky Sports News, "I know John well. He is hugely ambitious. His work ethic is second to none. Spurs are a huge club, so if Ange decides he wants to take him, then John has got that decision. I won't tell John what to do, because he is very much his own man. He will be a manager at some point. He will be a great manager at some point. For me, It depends on when John wants to make that step. We have seen recently where young managers have done it too early, so he might just be looking at going down there and working with the likes of Harry Kane. There are some exceptional players down there he could work with. Does he want to be a manager in his own right, or go down to the Premier League as a number 2 and gain even more experience, so when he decides to be a manager, he has huge experience to tap into when required? There's big decisions for him, and we can only speculate about it. Report by Aidan Smith. Evening Times Sport, June 9. Craig Mulholland set for Rangers reunion with Ross Wilson. Report by Ewan Payton. Craig Mulholland is set for a Rangers reunion with Ross Wilson. The Daily Record reports that the former Rangers Academy director will join Nottingham Forest. It was announced last month that Mulholland would be leaving Ibrox after several years at the top of the club's academy. His exit was part of a huge restructuring behind the scenes at the club, which also saw Wilson leave for Forest. But it seems Mulholland will not be on the sidelines for much longer, with this report stating that Wilson is keen on bringing him to the City ground. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 9. Inside Postecoglou's Celtic exit. Report by Ewan Payton. Ange Postecoglou may have jumped at the chance to join Tottenham Hotspur earlier this week. However, the 57-year-old reportedly knocked back 3 different approaches to leave Celtic for the Premier League this season. The Australian signed a 4-year deal with the North London club on Tuesday, a matter of days after he guided the Hoops to their 8th treble. The Scottish Cup success also secured his 5th trophy out of 6 during his 2 years spent in Glasgow. Nearly all Celtic fans have been left devastated by his departure, with some a little upset with Postecoglou himself over his decision. But it could have been very different this season, as Postecoglou could well have left mid-season, which he is said to have had ample opportunities to do. Australian media outlet Keep Up reports that Brighton, Wolves and Southampton each made an approach for Postecoglou over the last 9 months. The report states that the boss and his agent Frank Trimboli rejected each of them, as the focus firmly remained on delivering success for Celtic on the pitch. Brendan Rodgers was heavily criticised for the way he left the Hoops for Leicester City in February 2019, prior to the end of the season. Most will appreciate Postecoglou's commitment until the finish line. However, attention has very much turned to who will take over in the Parkhead hot seat, with Rodgers and Enzo Maresca among the favourites for the job. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 9. The fixture. Saudi domination of sport feels scarily inevitable. Report by James Morgan. The future of sport looks terrifying right now. On Monday of this week, tech giant Apple unveiled its new virtual reality headset, the Apple Vision Pro, which is scheduled to be available next year for the not inconsiderable sum of $3,500 or thereabouts. This is the most valuable company in the world, making its play for not just its slice of the sports pie that everyone else is eyeing greedily, but the whole cake and a few pastries on the side too. The Vision Pro will give owners a full immersive experience, giving them access to multi-view broadcasts, up-close replays, and gaming displays. There was a time when immersive experience meant actually going to the game, but not any longer, it seems. To make it all work, of course, Apple will need content, and already there is talk of possible bids for a Premier League package to add to the exclusive rights it holds to Major League Soccer and select Major League Baseball games. The company is also weighing up a bid for NBA broadcasts, an auction that could reach $75 billion. On the same day as Apple's announcement, it emerged that reigning Ballon d'Or winner Karim Benzema had signed a 2-year deal with Saudi Arabian club Al Ittihad for £200 million per season, having voided the final year of his contract at Real Madrid. The following morning, N'Golo Kante, the Chelsea midfielder and France World Cup winner, was reported to be joining his international teammate at Al Ittihad for £100 million per season. And while the Saudis ultimately missed out on Lionel Messi, there was a back page grabber still to come. For of those announcements made the sporting world sit up and take notice, they were nothing compared to the collective gasps heard around the globe as Jay Monahan, the PGA Tour Commissioner, made the shock revelation that his tour was merging with the LIV Golf Tour that it had been in an acrimonious dispute with, a conflict which has bordered on war over the past 18 months, to create a World Golf Tour. Monahan has faced accusations of selling out and hypocrisy in the days since his announcement, not wholly unfairly, given his over-my-dead-body approach since LIV appeared on the scene early last year. Rory McIlroy, one of the biggest critics of the Saudi-backed tour, admitted he felt like a sacrificial lamb for standing up for the PGA during that time, and said that he still hated LIV, adding that the players who defected should not be welcomed with open arms. But there was also an acceptance of the Saudis' inevitability by the Northern Irishmen. Whether you like it or not, the PIF and the Saudis want to spend money in the game of golf, said the world number 3, with a figurative, if not quite literal, shrug of the shoulders. They want to do this, and they weren't going to stop. So how can we get that money into the game, but use it the right way? This is, of course, the sports washing machine on full spin. There is a general acceptance now that you can smell something that's badly off, but they are just going to have to hold your nose anyway. The Saudis are now positioning themselves for a run at a future World Cup. They have their eyes on tennis and other sports. This has been part of an orchestrated strategy by Mohammed bin Salman aimed at realizing his Vision 2030 financial dream of a Saudi no longer reliant on diminishing oil revenues. Nothing will stand on its way. For the individual appalled by human rights abuses in Saudi and the state's connection to the September 11 terror attacks, there is little that can be done, of course. The worrying dimension to the PGA LIV merger is that it feels like the takeover of an entire sport. This should be a job for governments. There should be some form of intervention. But alas, they seem all too happy to sit back benignly. Remember Boris Johnson helping to smooth the way for PIF to purchase Newcastle United? Oh, how quickly the Roman Abramovich farrago at Chelsea was forgotten to allow that Saudi deal to progress. Where there are vast wads of money involved, the aims of the super-rich are inevitable. A few years back, the fixture read a dystopian piece which speculated on the commercial takeover of sport, which conjured up fictional football matches featuring the likes of, and we're paraphrasing slightly here, Coca-Cola Manchester United against Sony Juventus in the grand final of the World Super League live from Riyadh. It felt and read like far-fetched nonsense, or it was a development that would occur many decades in the future. Just a few years on, it seems a more realistic prospect than ever, says James Morgan. Evening Times Sport, June 12. Ajax talks with Knutsen break down, opening the way for Celtic to make move. Report by Matthew Lindsay. Celtic will not face any competition from Ajax if they want to appoint Kjetil Knutsen as their new manager, after talks between the Norwegian and the Dutch giants broke down. Knutsen, who led Bodo Glimt to back-to-back Eliteserien titles in 2020 and 2021, had been targeted as a replacement for John Heitinga by the Eredivisie club after a disappointing season. However, the Johan Cruyff Arena outfit have now turned their attentions elsewhere after they failed to reach agreement with the 54-year-old during negotiations over the weekend. Ajax Director of Football Sven Mislintat had travelled to Norway last week in an attempt to secure the services of the man who was crowned Coach of the Year in his homeland in 2019, 20 and 21. However, the former Champions League winners have now admitted defeat after failing to agree terms with the manager, who took Bodo into the quarter-finals of the UEFA Conference League last season. Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf reported. The German Mislintat himself was in Norway for 3 days to convince Knutsen of a switch to Ajax, and Knutsen's agent Mike Kajolo then travelled to Amsterdam to discuss the personal conditions of the Norwegian coach. Somewhere there has been a hitch in the negotiations. The Norwegian has a special and unusual contract with his club in Norway. He personally shares in the transfer proceeds of players who are sold by Bodo. Ajax are now looking to bring Maurice Stein of Sparta Rotterdam in as the replacement. Knutsen has been installed as one of the favourites to take over from Postecoglou at Parkhead, following the Greek Australian's departure. The Norwegian coach, who is under contract until December 2024, has transformed Bodo's fortunes at home and abroad. He masterminded a 5-1 aggregate victory over Celtic in the Conference League knockout round play-off last season, and many Celtic fans would like to see the Scottish champions appoint him as Postecoglou's replacement. Evening Times Sport, June 12. Celtic hold face-to-face talks with Brendan Rodgers. Report by David Irvin. Celtic club chiefs reportedly flew to Mallorca over the weekend to hold face-to-face talks with Brendan Rodgers. It's claimed Chief Executive Michael Nicholson and Finance Director Chris Mackay flew by private jet to Rodgers' home in Spain on Saturday to discuss a return to Parkhead. The former Leicester boss has been a front-runner for the job since Ange Postecoglou's exit for Tottenham Hotspur last week. However, doubts emerged with Rodgers having planned time out from football after being dismissed by Leicester last season. The Daily Mail report, though, that Rodgers has held initial talks with Celtic chiefs over a possible stunning return to Glasgow. It's thought Rodgers has the backing of Celtic Supremo Dermot Desmond and will consider an opportunity to return to the club ahead of fresh discussions this week. And Celtic could convince John Kennedy to remain in Glasgow with the return of Rodgers. Postecoglou is keen to bring Kennedy, as well as Gavin Strachan and analyst Greg Wallace, to Spurs, but Celtic are intent of retaining the services of the coach, and the report suggests Rodgers returning to Celtic could keep Kennedy with Chris Davis in the running for the Swansea job. Speaking previously on a possible return to Parkhead in the future, Rodgers said, "The club were keen to bring me in, and they were in a moment where Rangers were close. They were getting promoted, and I went in and created, hopefully, a really good base. That challenge may come again, because it was a real challenge to go in, and that challenge may come in the future, and I would have absolutely no hesitation going back. Incredible club, but like everything in life, it's just about timing. Whether I would be received back or not is a different story. But would I go back to Celtic? Absolutely." Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, June 12th. Rio Hatate drops major hint on Celtic future. Report by Mark Walker. Rio Hatate has dropped a huge hint that he has no intention of quitting Celtic like Ange Postecoglou, after revealing he's already set his targets for next season. And he's admitted he actually felt a tinge of jealousy towards Japanese countryman Kyogo Furuhashi after he swept the board in the Player of the Year awards in Scotland, but is proud of his part in his success. Hatate is preparing for Japan's internationals this month, along with Furuhashi and Daisen Maeda, after helping the Hoops win the treble. He's been linked with a big move to England or abroad, after an excellent season for Celtic. Furuhashi won both the PFA Scotland and SFWA Player of the Year awards, after an outstanding season where he scored 27 league goals. And Hatate was proud to have played his part, even though he admitted he looked on with a hint of envy. He said, "Looking back on my own season, I played 32 league games, scoring 6 goals and assisting 9. In all official games I had 9 goals and 11 assists. I was aiming for double-figure goals and double-figure assists. So while I achieved my assists, I didn't reach my goal-scoring target, which will be the challenge for next season." Kyogo was named Scottish Premiership Player of the Year. As a fellow Japanese player, I felt proud, but also frustrated. If I had worked harder, I could have won that honour. On the one hand, I was happy for him, but on the other hand, I frankly felt frustrated. It will motivate me even further to grow as a player. In the Scottish League, a foreign country, a Japanese player scored 27 goals and became the top scorer. This is no easy feat. That's why I'm happy that I was able to make a small contribution with my assists. Last season, when I joined Celtic in the middle of the campaign, my problem was I ran out of steam in terms of my condition by the end of the season. But this season, I set myself the goal of maintaining a high level of performance throughout the season, and I was able to do that and play in the Champions League. I regard it as a solid season. I feel that I was able to show consistent play throughout the season in a position where, like Kyogo, I am expected to contribute not only in terms of visible goals, but also in terms of attack and defence. On a personal level, it also gave me confidence that I could always get a chance to play. I was competing for the same midfield position as Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly and Aaron Mooy. McGregor is the team captain and represents Scotland. Mooy also represented Australia, and O'Reilly at 22 was younger than me and had a lot of momentum. I had to work hard every day competing for places with these players, so it was a solid feeling to be able to keep my place. Both Kyogo and Dazen Maeda are strikers with speed as their speciality. I have worked hard to pass the ball quickly when they start to move, and as a result of that I have become more confident in my play, which is reflected in the 11 assists I have made. Hatate, in his column in a newspaper in his homeland, revealed how much he loved winning the treble with Celtic after beating Caley Thistle, and he stated, "It's been 3.5 years since I turned professional, and I've been lucky enough to win the title every year. No matter how many times we have won, none of them have been the same, and each time we get a different sense of fulfillment and achievement, probably because of that explosive joy shown by the fans who cheer us on." I was thinking about that, watching the joy of the supporters at Hampden Park after our 3-1 win over Inverness in the Scottish Cup final. The smiles I have seen since joining Celtic inspire me to get better and help me to grow. Kyogo scored the opening goal, and I always tried to make use of his quickness of movement, and this season, when I looked up on the pitch, I first looked for him and tried to pass to him as much as possible. My personal favourite moments of the season were assists against Hearts and St Mirren in the league, and the one I gave to Kyogo in the League Cup final. Many of the goals he has scored have been one-touch goals, and that's because of his movement. This season we have had much more conversations on the pitch. I am always looking for his runs, and as a result I think I have become a better player. Remember, I was originally a striker, but at Celtic I started to play in midfield, and I have been able to play this role largely because of Kyogo. Report by Mark Walker. Evening Times Sport, June 12. Nick Rodger says, "Hooray for Hollywood, as major event brings much needed relief from turmoil." What a time for golf. Things were already pretty turbulent in the upper echelons of the men's professional game, as the civil war between the established tours and LIV roared on. And then along came a truce between the various factions to fling some much-needed turmoil into the equation. The announcement last week that the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which bankrolls the rebel LIV series, were merging into a new money-sodden alliance, generated the kind of mouth-gaping sense of surprise that Cilla Black used to conjure when she reunited a family with an uncle they had not seen for 42 years. The bombshell revelation caught all and sundry on the hop, amid tales of clandestine meetings and nod-and-a-wink dealings. In the general pandemonium that ensued, it was almost easy to forget that there is another major championship on the horizon. Given the veil of secrecy that was shrouded over the formation of golf's new coalition, it is perhaps fitting that the third major of the men's season is being held at Los Angeles Country Club, which sits just a dinky wedge away from Hollywood. It is a place so exclusive, you probably had more chance of getting a tip-off about the covert conversations about that merger than you had of getting through the gates of this plush paradise of privilege and privacy. I've not played there. I'll sort of lay my eyes on it on Monday when I get to LA, said Rory McIlroy, as he prepared for a step into the unknown. This staging of the 123rd United States Open will be the first time the championship has been in the Los Angeles area since 1948, when the great Ben Hogan triumphed at Riviera a year before the devastating car crash that almost cost him his life. Here in 2023, not many of the main movers and shakers will have much idea of the LA Country Club's golfing nooks and crannies, although Scotty Scheffler, the world number one, and 2021 Open champion Colin Morikawa were both part of the USA Walker Cup side, which thumped Great Britain at Ireland 19-7 on this patch of land in 2017. Scheffler comes into another major week in fine fettle, with 2 PGA Tour wins and a second place in last month's PGA Championship. The 26-year-old's 2023 has been wonderfully consistent, and he has not finished outside the top 12 in 13 starts this season. Matt Fitzpatrick, who claimed the United States Open last year with a 9-iron approach for the ages, had his own reconnaissance mission earlier in the campaign, and the defending champion liked what he saw. He said, "The big thing is around the greens. You can't miss them. I think it's going to be really difficult to make ups and downs. It definitely strikes me as a United States Open style course. You've got to be really strong tee to green. To defend any title is great. To defend a United States Open is 10 million times better." Scheffler and Fitzpatrick are already major champions. One man trying to clamour into that pantheon is Norway's Victor Hovland. Like an overworked Avon lady, Hovland continues to knock on the doors. The 25-year-old, who was fourth in last year's Open at St Andrews, was right in the thick of it again at April's Masters, but slithered out of the running on the final day with a 74. At May's PGA Championship, he played second fiddle to the imperious Brooks Koepka and shared the runners-up prize. Fresh from a fine playoff victory at the Memorial the other week, Hovland heads for Hollywood with momentum and lofty morale. And he said, "Just being in contention as many times as I've been over the last year is a great sign in itself. Obviously, I would have liked to have finished off a few more tournaments. The PGA was a great step in the right direction. I didn't really feel I backed down that Sunday. Brooks went out there and earned it. You've just got to keep learning from it instead of thinking, okay, here we go again. I'm not going to win this week. You've just got to keep fighting. The fighting may be over in golf's battle of attrition, but the unlikely ceasefire has led to more questions than answers. A major championship may just provide some much-needed relief from the tumult. Hooray for Hollywood indeed, says Nick Roger. Evening Times Sport, June 12. Rangers in discussions with Panzo transfer. Report by David Irvin. Rangers are reportedly in talks with Nottingham Forest over a £2.5 million transfer deal to sign Jonathan Panzo. It's claimed Michael Beale is keen on a swoop for the 22-year-old defender. The Ibrox boss coached Panzo as a youngster at Chelsea and reportedly watched the defender in action numerous times last season. Now the Daily Record report Rangers chiefs are edging closer to finalising a £2.5 million deal to bring Panzo to Ibrox. The report claims Beale is looking to bolster his defensive options in the off-season by bringing in a left-sided centre-back. It's thought Panzo fits the bill, with Austin Trusty also linked with a switch to Rangers as part of Beale's major squad reconstruction this summer. However, a move for Panzo is reportedly more likely, with negotiations ongoing over a switch from Forest to Rangers. Panzo has spent last season on loan with Coventry and could make a quick-fire exit from Forest upon his return from loan in a permanent move north. It's claimed Rangers are in pole position to land him in the summer due to Beale's strong links with the player, and discussions over a transfer deal are set to continue this week with another Ibrox connection, as Ross Wilson is now sporting director for Forest. Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, June 12. Rugby. Ritchie backs a Scotland team on top of their game to beat anyone. Report by Stuart Bathgate. Jamie Ritchie is convinced that Scotland are now capable of beating any other side on the planet when they are on top of their game. As the countdown to the Rugby World Cup continues, the national team's captain knows they will need to be on top of their game far more consistently if they are to make an impact at the tournament. Gregor Townsend's team, 5th in the world rankings, have been drawn in the same pool as Ireland, number 1, and South Africa, number 4, as well as Tonga and Romania. They lost to the Irish as well as to France in the Six Nations, but Ritchie believes there were encouraging signs in the championship which suggest that if Scotland can keep up their recent improvement, they can qualify from that pool. He said, "We had a pretty successful Six Nations. Beforehand, if you had asked anyone out with the group if they would have taken outright third, behind arguably the best two teams in the world, they probably would have said yes. The France game is the one that hurts the most, because arguably we were the better team on the day. We just didn't quite get it right at the start of the game and at the end. We need to put a full performance together, a complete performance. We have shown over the last couple of seasons that on our day, if we play our best rugby, we can beat anyone in the world and be a better team than anyone in the world. You saw that against France, when we were all over them for 60 minutes of the game. If we can turn that into an 80-minute performance, we are going to cause these teams, who are supposedly some of the best in the world, a lot of problems." Townsend recently agreed a new long-term contract that will see him remain as head coach well beyond the World Cup, which kicks off in early September when host nation France play New Zealand. And last week his assistant coaches, including defence coach Steve Tandy, also signed new deals. Ritchie has been encouraged by the stability and continuity that these negotiations have ensured, and has been especially enthralled by the fact that Tandy is to remain in place for some time to come. He said, "The coaching team around Gregor is probably one of the best in the world. Steve Tandy is probably the best coach I've ever worked with in terms of his detail. The way he shaped our defence has been outstanding. If you were to go into our squad and ask what our defence is, its identity, people would all come out with very similar answers. And that's a sign we are on the same page. Steve's job is to get our defence right, and part of our defence is trying to get the ball back so we can attack. The bits where we've had to adapt is looking at the areas where we can put teams under pressure to get the ball back. That's the one thing he's thinking about most." Ritchie is now 26 and was speaking at a touch rugby session at the Madras Rugby Club in St Andrews, where he was accompanied by Edinburgh teammate Grant Gilchrist, Glasgow Warriors players James Batty and George Horn, and Warriors and Scotland assistant coach Pete Horn, George's older brother. It was a nostalgic occasion for Ritchie, who first picked up a rugby ball the best part of 2 decades ago on the very same playing fields. And he said, "This is where my rugby journey started, so it's pretty cool to be back. It's a bit of a full circle moment. When I was in primary 4, I started mini rugby here. My dad was the coach. I ran about here dreaming of playing for Scotland. I think the first time I ever met a Scotland player was probably about 20 yards from the spot we're standing on at the moment, which is pretty cool. I've got a picture of it. It would have been the 2006 Six Nations team. They trained down here before the Six Nations. I remember them all coming down. My family home is 5 minutes away from here, so it's quite nice to be back. It's not changed too much, which is nice." As he and his teammates put a large group of local girls and boys through their paces, it was easy to imagine that in 20 years' time, one of them might have the same kind of tale to tell, of meeting a Scotland player for the first time, then going on to become one themselves. And Richie added, "That would be nice. That would be pretty cool to have a similar kind of story." Scottish Rugby's Custodian Board have appointed 2 non-executive directors, Alison Milne, MBE, and Maxine Mandich. Professor Lauren Creer, CBE, has had his term as chairman of the board extended by 2 years until October 2025. Report by Stuart Bathgate.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.